So the first thing that you're going to want to do is remove these 4 Phillips head screws. I've already done this. And then you'll want to remove these little black plastic clips. These little pegs are the backplate standoffs. See that little triangle? Well, that's the triangle that we want to match up on our Ryzen 7 1700 with this little gold triangle. Pull back on the retention arm and lift up carefully, matching the triangles. Gently set down, give it a little wiggle, make sure it's all in there, and then just slide that retention bar back down. Remember those pegs? So for our cooler, we have these little black standoffs. Just little plastic guys. We're going to put one over each peg. And then here's the retention bracket. The bracket is marked for AM3 and AM4, so we're just going to mark this down with the AM4. Alright, got that down. This is our M.2 NVMe drive. We're going to match the notch, slide it in a 45. And it's going to be a little spring here, so we're going to hold this down. And then put in this tiny little screw to hold the drive down. It's actually really simple to install these M.2s. There's only one way for them to go in, so. This is our DDR4 RAM. We're going to match the notch up to the notch in the socket. Slide it in, press down firmly on both sides until you hear the click. We're setting this up in a dual channel configuration, so basically if you just start from the furthest slot and then skip one, you'll be in dual channel mode. Alright, so we're going to put a bit of thermal paste on here. Now I do my application a bit differently. A lot of people are going to freak out about that, but I actually just manually spread mine over the entire IHS. You might want to do this before you put in the retention brackets, because it can be a bit of a pain. I learned that the hard way right here. But now that we got the paste on there, we're going to set our cooler right on there, making sure that the cold plate covers the entire chip. This is our little retention bar, so we just slide it right over here. Make sure it lines up on the bracket. Line our cooler back up. Again, you want to really make sure that you're covering the entirety of your processor for proper cooling. Well, now that we got everything in place, just a couple of Phillips screws. Now when you're doing this, just barely get them started, just get them threaded, because you don't want to put too much uneven pressure on a processor. So after you get both of them threaded, then you're going to want to slowly kind of give it like 1.5 turns on each side until you get it right where you want it. Basically, with this kind of a mechanism, the nice thing is you can pretty much go almost as tight as it can go, but not quite, I guess. It's you get a feel for it. When it starts getting a little more difficult, that's when you kind of want to slow down and go half turns. And then give it a good half a turn, and then you'll be good. As long as your cooler is still in its proper place and it doesn't wiggle around, you'll be good to go. Now that we got that on there, we attach little clips on one side of the fan. We line it up with the little pads on the front of the heatsink. The fan cable will kind of snake on the underside here. So once we get the little bracket clipped on one side, again making sure the fan is lined up with the little pads on the cooler. Cable's in the right place. Take the other bracket, clip on the other side. And now that we can plop that on, now snake through, my fat head can get in the way of the camera, and plug that in to the fan header. Make sure the cable is out of sight. Just makes it a cleaner build. Looks a little tidier. Alright, so with our case laid flat, first thing that we're going to want to do is install our I/O shield. The I/O shield will make sure that no dust can get in from the back, but it also gives us a little bit of protection on the ports. So that way we can actually find things easier when we're trying to plug them in. This is our I/O shield. All we got to do is put it into the back, and then we press firmly on each corner to snap it into place. Just make sure that you match up with the back I/O of the motherboard. But now we can take the motherboard. All of our standoffs are pre-installed again. So now we just carefully line this up with the I/O bracket. Get it in there, make sure it's getting on the standoffs. That center standoff makes it really handy because as long as you're lined up with that, and for the most part you're lined up with the rest of them. So now that we have our motherboard in place, we can go ahead and we can start mounting it down. Last screw. Now we're going to go ahead and install our M.2 SATA based SSD in our bottom slot here. Installation process is the exact same as our NVMe drive. So we inserted a 45, make sure it's in place. Again, it's a little springy, so you just hold that down. And then you get the tiny little screw in there. I had to get it started with my magnetic screwdriver. It was being a bit of a pain. But now we got that guy installed. So now we have both of our SSDs installed. And here we go. We flipped it up. We have a fan header right here, and that we have plugged into one of our front case fans. Now we're going to show you a little bit of cable management. Nice thing about this Meshify C is it comes with a few velcro straps for tidiness and everything, but I tend to go a bit overboard, some people say, but we'll see. So basically what we're doing here is we're just splitting our cables off, getting them kind of set aside here. This is our audio cable. We're going to feed that through the bottom here underneath. We're going to have it just run right down the channel here and then along the bottom of the motherboard tray. Got some zip ties here. I like to always do this laying flat. So these are little tie down points. This is what makes this case so good for cable management, in my opinion. So I just want to kind of get it started here and then feed it exactly where I want it to go. And now I'll tighten all these off, and that'll hold it exactly where I want this cable. These are our front panel connectors. They got a twist tie around them, so just get them all undone here. And there's another little cutout right where the front I/O would go, so I'm just feeding them all through here. And then I will get them all connected up in the front. So here we are back in the front here. Here is our HD front audio connector. So we're just going to plug our audio cable that we already ran through the back here. Get that guy plugged in. And now what we can do is we'll kind of flip this guy up. Cable's still where we want it, so we're going to pull the excess out. Make sure it doesn't unplug anything. And then right now I'm just deciding where to route that excess. So, as you can see, I just kind of had it come up and loop. You'll see it better here in a second. So it loops up and then back down and through that little cutout in the back there. Getting all the velcro straps set up the way we want it. This big old monster right here is the front panel USB 3.0 header. And I just got it routed where it's going to be popping out, or where the connector is on the motherboard, I should say. These are our front panel headers. So we're just tightening these guys up. Just kind of stuff them right up in there. This isn't going to be the greatest cable management, but this is the what I would consider a baseline for it anyway. Alright. So there's our 3.0 header. See that little notch? The plug has a notch in it. So you just match up the notch, you plug it in, and you're good to go. So here we are back at our front panel. Now we're actually going to show you how they plug in. So, as you can see, I wanted to show you, but then I blocked the camera. So, they all feed in. Power positive, negative usually is the top right. So that's for your power button. Reset is right below that. Hard drive LED activity is usually on the top left. That's usually all you need. Power LED is right below that. If you want to keep like lighting to a minimum, you don't have to have the power LED or the hard drive activity lights plugged in. You can just plug in the power and reset buttons, and everything will run fine. But now that we got everything plugged in, we can go ahead and tidy this up a bit. So we're going to come back to the back side, and we are going to gently kind of pull back on it to get all the excess out. That way it looks a lot cleaner in the front. And then we're going to use a couple of cable ties, zip ties, to get this set up here, get everything a little cleaner. Again, not the best cable management, just kind of shoving everything up in here. Get this velcro strap back in place. Again, just kind of stuffed in there. Alright, so we got the back bracket installed on the power supply here. It's non-modular, so we need all these cables. So we're going to kind of reach through the backside, grab them, and feed them through with it. Now that audio cable makes this a tight fit, so carefully finagle that guy in there. I really... You could not run it that way, the audio cable, but it's the cleanest route for it. It's the short. It makes the most sense. So just, I don't know. I had to deal with it, and it's still, in my opinion, the best way to go. So just when you go to get the power supply in, just be a little careful finagling it in there. So what I'm doing with the cables right now is I'm just separating them out based off of what I need. I'm getting there's the CPU power cable right there. I'm just moving off to the side. This is PCI Express power for graphics card. And then one of these is SATA for the mechanical drive that we're putting in here. And then I'm kind of bunching the ones up that we're not going to need. I'm just kind of getting them together so that way they're out of the way, so to speak. So we're going to take that power connector. Well, let's finagle this thing in here first. Now that we got it in, we can use the thumb screws here to finish installing the bracket. And officially, the power supply is installed. And now we get the fun part of routing power supply cables. So this is our EPS or CPU power. So we're going to just snake that along the side here. Now this one's not as long as I would like it. I'd love it to just be able to go right along the side here. But as you'll see in a minute, it just is not long enough. But I got that pre-ran there just kind of quickly. Then we're going to do the same thing for PCI Express power. And this big old honker is our main 24-pin power. So I'm just loosening the velcro strap because this is where it's going to go into. This is where the connector is on the motherboard, so I'm just getting that set up there. And then I just pop the connector right through that rubber grommet. And it's waiting for me on the other side. Alright, so now I gotta get the mess of wires out of the way. Because now is the time to install our mechanical drive. This is just for mass storage. So we're going to install this in the bottom bay. Nice thing is it clips in, so when you slide in there, it's good to go there. So now we got to get SATA power going to it. So I picked the plug that I want to use, and I got it plugged in. I got bigger zip ties to handle like bigger mass of cables, but basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bunch them all together, a couple of different spots, make it a bit easier to manage. And again, these are all the cables that are not being used, so I'm just bundling them up, tying them off. That way we can kind of put them out of the way. That's the nice part. There's so much room in this basement, as they say, that those excess cables can literally just be stuffed in between the back of the power supply and the hard drive bay. It's a bit snug. I kind of tied them off a bit close to each other, and finagling them in there was a bit of a chore, but we got it all.
This is a bit of a chore. The best one! Oh yeah. This place is stuck. Yeah. What is this, a pear? Or is this a booba?
Alright, so now we have the data cable for our SATA drive. We're just going to feed that through right here.
This a bug tent. A bug.
And it pops out right there. So now that everything's fed through to the front, we can turn around and start actually connecting everything. Here's our 8-pin power. The connector is normally in the top left of the board. So the two 4 pins just connect together, and then you plug them all into the motherboard connector right here. And then here's the nice part about all this is they're all keyed, so there's only one connector that can go in there, and only one way for it to go in properly, so it's almost impossible to mess this up. So we'll take our 24 pin, make sure the little clippy gets in here, and then we just install it. Make sure to firmly press down until you hear that click. And again, just push the excess through. Let me block the camera for you guys.
It's awesomely stuffed.
So we're going to move our power connector to the side. Now, we're going to push down on our PCIe retention bracket, line up the slots, and press firmly down until we hear it click. In this case, this is a little finagly, so I had to loosen this thumb screw here in order to get this installed properly. But now that we have the video card installed, we can take the 2 thumb screws and put it back in here. And we take our 8-pin power connector here. I use the further away connector so I could kind of snake it back, pull it through, and now we just get to tie everything off. As you can see with that CPU power cable, it did not run along the far edge, so I just had to go right through there, but it worked out just fine. So just use as many cable ties as you need. All the tied down points are there. And really, as long as you can get that back panel on there, you're good to go. Make sure everything is laying flat. And now, back panel on. Build complete.